Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 8th lesson in our English language writing GCSE study guide series. If you haven't been on this channel before, what I'm trying to do is give you the toolkit that you need to be really good with your creative writing section or your transactional writing section. Pretty much every exam board will ask you to do either one or both of these sections. Okay, so over the last 7 weeks, we've been going through creative writing in a lot of detail. And we've started transactional writing a couple of weeks ago, and we're going through what you need to do for that. So yeah, effectively, if you haven't seen any of those videos, I highly recommend you check those out, especially if you've got these exams coming up in the next sort of week or two now. It's getting really, really close. Due to some requests that I've had, I do think that I might do one more video on transactional, just boosting out some details of how to plan it. But just as a quick recap, for those people that have asked about it, just remember that it's about this thing called type, audience, purpose, subject. As long as you know the type, audience, purpose, subject, you're going to be in a really good position. And my general recommendation for any transactional piece you do is you should plan out the main body points that you have. So maybe there would be 3 or 4 of those. Then from that, you can create your introduction. And from that, you can also create your conclusion. So hopefully that clears some things up. Today, we're going to go through a model answer of transactional. Now, I am aware that my year 11s watching this will only be asked to do an article, a magazine article, or a newspaper article. Not every exam board is doing that, but almost everyone, that's what's happening. This is not a newspaper article or a magazine article today. This is just an outstanding piece of writing. And the reason that I decided to start with this model answer is because I just feel like there's so much good stuff in terms of hitting the type, hitting the audience, hitting the purpose, hitting the subject. It's been very well planned. It has tons of the Anaphora flesh that I would want you to put into your own pieces. So it's been really fleshed out well with great statistics and facts, anecdotes, expert opinions, etc., etc. So it's just a great piece of writing for us to go through together. Even though it's not a magazine article or a newspaper article format, it still has a lot that you could learn from it. And if you aren't in year 11, then obviously this is perfect for you because you might be asked to write a letter. So this is exactly what you would do. So let's dive in, and I'll just give you my thoughts on it and why it's so good. And no piece is perfect. And I'm pretty picky. So I might find a few things that I would want to change as well. So if that happens, then I will let you know, obviously, because I'll be talking to you. I'm not with it today. I apologize. I actually just got back from a doctor's appointment before I started recording this, and I'm just all over the place. So hopefully I don't embarrass myself too much here. But don't worry, you're in good hands. I've been doing this well over a decade now. So even with half my brain, I'm better than most people at this. Okay, so dear counsellor, I'm writing to you today to express my support for the council to invest in more open spaces with facilities for all ages. Now, the question was, write a letter persuading the council what you would do with a large sum of money. Some of my students have done a very similar piece to this. So if you are one of those students that's watching this, just compare it to what you did as well, because there will be good things with what you did and there'll be good things of what this student has done. So invest in more open spaces with facilities for all ages. I strongly believe, and scientific evidence proves, the many positive benefits that we all receive from more access to green spaces. So look at how good this introduction is. It's not just saying, I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to talk about that. It's sort of giving a soft landing into it. So they're going to speak about how these green spaces help people of different age groups. They're going to speak about some of the science and evidence of the positive benefits of more green space. But they're not just, it's subtle. They're not saying that that's what they're going to talk about. They're introducing it. It's much better. This ranges from physical to mental well-being and includes the additional benefits of reducing pollution in our area and making a valuable contribution towards the fight against climate change. Happier citizens, cleaner air, more sustainable future. So there's a couple of great things in here. As I said, it's a soft landing. I love the tricolon at the end. I think that tricolons can be really impactful in introductions as well as conclusions. And tricolons are really good if you're trying to emphasize a particular message. So clearly this is a persuasive piece. Clearly they want to persuade the reader that the money should go towards green spaces. So just emphasizing three of the benefits: happier citizens, cleaner air, sustainable future. It's a really, really impactful ending to a very good introduction. And again, this next bit here, the student doesn't say, I will talk about mental well-being, I will talk about physical benefits, I will talk about climate change and pollution. It just gives that soft landing that these are the benefits of doing this. And now we go into the main body paragraphs and we'll start to see those introduced things being unpacked in a really strong way. It's common knowledge that open spaces are vital for everyone's well-being. So I really like the fact that it's a fact, and it's also just a short, simple sentence at the beginning of the paragraph. So again, that's nice and punchy. It introduces that this is going to be a paragraph about the well-being of using these open spaces. A communal space such as a park or public garden opens opportunities for socializing, exercising, and well-being. Now that is also another little triadic structure. You don't want to overuse these things, you know, you don't want to over pepper the steak or over salt the food or whatever, but it's not bad to have a few tricolons and triads across a piece. So that's again, very impactful. One of the important benefits in having green spaces in our area means that there are numerous chances for people to exercise. It is now widely accepted that living in or immersing ourselves in areas with grass and trees diminishes the risk of a number of health conditions, which benefits citizens and lowers the current strain on the NHS. So that is a very long sentence, but it has this energy and pace to it about one of the big bonuses of these green spaces. But they don't stop there. 79% of the population reported going outside daily improve their happiness and decrease their stress. So we've got a really compelling statistic. It makes sense. I don't know if they made this up or actually found that statistic or not, but I believe that statistic. And I would say to you, when you're doing your exams, it's fine to make up statistics because this is still treated somewhat as a creative writing, even though it's meant to be like nonfiction. We don't expect you to be experts in every subject of every topic that could come up. So make statistics and facts up as long as they sound convincing. If they'd written 100% of the population reported going outside improved their happiness, that doesn't sound believable. There's always going to be a few house cats that don't enjoy going outside and they want to stay indoors and, you know, do whatever they're doing indoors. But 79%, that seems very convincing. I believe that's almost certainly true. As a council of well-educated members, you must be aware of the increasing threat pollution and climate change present to human health. There's a couple of things I like here. I like the idea that in a persuasive piece, you butter up your audience. So calling the council well-educated members is just a bit of flattery. Flattery gets you a long way when it comes to persuasion. And then we've used a rhetorical question at the end here, which again is really well implemented. If you want to make your audience think about something, a rhetorical question is a fantastic way of doing that, which makes sense, right? Because if you ask a question about something, then the reader's mind or the audience's mind is immediately going to start thinking about that topic. Unlike many of us, it is within your power to make a difference for good. And I'm sure you would want that for you, your family, and all of our futures. Okay, so we've got another triadic structure here. I will say that we probably don't want many more of those across this piece now. Like I said, you can oversalt with these things. Don't lay on too thick one technique. It slides in nicely. You know, if I wasn't analyzing this to death, then I may not have noticed that they'd used 3 already. So, you know, there is some leeway on this, but just be careful. You don't want to overuse things too much. it is within your power to make a difference for good. Slightly flattery again, like the Council of Well-Educated Members. Also slightly just sort of emotive language, right? You, Mr. Mrs. Counselor, you have the power to make these changes. We don't. Do the right thing, do the good thing for your constituents, right? It's very good. These open spaces will not only encourage an increase of local wildlife, it will also encourage an influx in tourism for the area, ultimately creating increased revenue. Now, here's an interesting thing. I would have liked to have seen that in the introduction. So I told you I might nitpick occasionally. We don't really see anything about increased tourism and increased revenue in here, but it's a good point, and I would have liked to have seen that at least briefly introduced. In a nutshell, whatever your main points are, make sure all of them make it to the intro. So the fact this one hasn't made it to the intro isn't a huge deal, but it does stick out. And I'm like, well, why didn't they include this in the intro? And if you've planned your piece properly, you shouldn't miss something like that, because you'll know what your 3 or 4 main points will be. And you literally take those 3 or 4 main points and shove them in the intro. Yeah, it's that simple. Okay. Can be seen in the 65% increase in tourism to Richmond Park after a cafe and cricket ground was installed in 2018. So this is sort of an interesting mixture of a sort of statistic, but also it's kind of an anecdote. It's like a short story, personal story. They've gone there, or they've seen this or whatever, which illustrates the benefit of doing this. So it's kind of a proven model. You can introduce facilities such as cafes, picnic areas, playgrounds, and exercise machines, and spaces such as tennis courts. This gives you a steady income from visitors that are encouraged to come for the facilities and may make a day out of it. This will also mean there will be a variety of ages visiting the open spaces, from children for the playgrounds to older generations who will make use of the comfortable seating in this area of natural beauty. Now, I will say, you don't want to stereotype too much. It's quite possible that the older generations won't just be sat in the comfortable seating area, right? They might also be on the tennis courts or in the cafes or whatever. But I think that generally this use of imagery and examples of how this may look is highly persuasive. So if you have a piece of writing that you're asked to do, which is persuasive, and it's asking you to sort of sell an idea, even though on the Daft Forest list, there isn't specifically a space that says imagery, it's really good to paint a picture for the reader or paint a picture for the audience. And that is what this student has done really well here, painting that picture for the reader. It is persuasive. The more that you can get the reader to picture what you're thinking or your viewpoint, the more likely it is that they will be persuaded by your picture or viewpoint. By having so many different variations of people accessing the parks, these open spaces will provide many opportunities for families to spend time with each other in a variety of available ways. Oh, the other thing, sorry, I just wanted to quickly say, both in the bit I've just read and in the use of older and younger generation, all of this links to what has been said here as well. Facilities for all ages. So it's inclusive. Everyone is going to benefit from this. It's not a suggestion which is just going to benefit, children, teenagers, adults, the elderly. It's literally going to benefit the whole spectrum. And again, that's very persuasive, because generally when you're making upgrades to your local community, you don't necessarily want to focus in on just a small segment. Ideally, you want to do an upgrade that benefits everyone. So if you do get a question like that, where it's about making a decision to benefit people, if it says specifically a type of person or an age group or something, then obviously you can focus in on them. But if it's just generally your local community, I highly recommend you choose to talk about something that will benefit everyone rather than focusing in on one group. That's typically going to be better. Spending time with your families and friends in a green space can lead to better better mental health for many. A meta-analysis, fancy, of 50 studies on green spaces concluded that 2/3 of the overall amount reported better well-being and 92% reported a better general health for participants. Now, with a tiny bit of tweaking, this becomes a really good expert opinion. So we could just put a meta-analysis from the University of Cambridge. And suddenly, just like that, we have an expert opinion because the expert is Cambridge University, and this meta-analysis of the 50 studies is the comment, basically. And if you don't know, a meta-analysis basically means that you take all of the data from however many studies, let's say in this case 50 studies. So you take all of that data, that's a heck of a lot of data. You take all of it in, you crunch the numbers across all 50 studies, and then you come up with an overall conclusion based on not just one study, but on 50. So they're a really strong scientific method of coming to conclusions. Because, you know, the problem with a single study at a time is that if it's too small, then it might come to the wrong conclusions about something. Whereas if you take 50 studies and they all seem to come to the same general conclusion, then that's got to be right. There's no real room for that much error across that many studies. So that's very convincing, a meta-analysis. That's a good term to put into your piece if you want to get super fancy. An excellent example of the need for these open spaces is the increased usage of all open spaces by most of the population during coronavirus lockdowns. Seeing a friend or family member in a socially distanced environment creates a better mental well-being, and I know multiple people who have found access to green spaces invaluable. So this is an anecdote, just plain and simple anecdote. What has also been done here, which I really like, is the student has utilized kind of like the, how would we say this? The student has utilized the current sort of thinking or the current social events. So obviously the most recent one for the last 2 years that have literally plagued us is COVID. So by talking about COVID and how this upgrade benefits that current challenge of COVID, that's again a massive win, very persuasive. As you can see throughout this letter, there are only benefits from creating more open spaces. It would bring financial benefits and result in the improved well-being of our community. There are many studies that support the many points I've made and no foreseeable disadvantages for this course of action. So they have decided not to try and look at any what's called counter arguments. I think that's fairly smart for this topic. Depending on the topic, you might want a counter argument in your piece. But for this particular topic, I have to say it's hard to see someone arguing against more green space. I would think that pretty much anyone would agree that more green space is good. The only slight negative maybe is it that, you know, if you don't maintain the green space properly, it could become overrun and maybe dangerous. But, you know, that's not really something that you have to worry about in this situation where it's going to be managed by a council. So I think that that's really good. That also acts as a conclusion, right? And remember that your conclusion should be a bit of a highlight reel. So there are only benefits from creating more open spaces. So it's like, boom, first highlight. It would bring financial benefits, boom. Second benefit, result in improved well-being of our community, boom. Another benefit and another highlight reel. Many studies that support the many points I've made, boom, boom. Again, great. And no foreseeable disadvantages for this course of action, boom. Again, no real downside. So look at that as a highlight reel. Advantage, 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 benefit, 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 no downside. Yeah, that's highly persuasive to finish a letter or any piece of writing that is persuasive. I implore you to take action. It is in your power to bring about a change for good. Now notice that that's a repetition. They wanted to add in at the end this repetition of like, you can make this choice, you can make this change. I can't, you can, do the right thing. So the repetition here, which is part of Da Forest as well, is highly powerful. It's also, I didn't even mention this, but throughout the whole thing, there's been lots of use of direct address as well. You can do this. Our community, we can do this. You, our, we, yeah? Direct address. For our people, for our planet, and for our future. Now, I'm not going to criticize that as an ending because I didn't see any other triadic structures or tricolons since the second paragraph. So I don't think they've overused it. And then just signed off yours faithfully. So this last bit, for good, for our people, for our planet, for our future, that one's technically, it is repetition, obviously, and it's a tricolon as well, but it's also just a little bonus thing. It's also technically called anaphora. So if you see this in any piece, you know, where there's a repetition of a structure, so in this case, it's for our people, for our planet, for our future, yeah? When there's a repetition like that next to each other, that's called anaphora. So it's a great use of anaphora. It's a level 9 piece, isn't it? I mean, let's just be honest. Let's call it what it is. There's a couple of small mistakes that I picked out. We're not expecting you to be absolutely perfect by the end of GCSEs. You know, I might joke that I want my students to be beyond perfect, but the truth is of course you're going to make a few minor mistakes. The major mistake she made, which is still very minor, and I said she, I can't actually remember if this was a male or female student, but anyway, whatever, is the fact that we didn't see the benefit of tourism and increasing local wildlife in the intro. Very minor thing, wouldn't knock you down at all. So there's a level 9 answer for you for transactional writing. Hopefully you've got something out of going on that journey with me. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, as always, please do comment down below. And I will see you in the next one. Thank you very much, people.